This is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. Today we're going to talk about the tips and tricks you can apply when working with your chickens in this system. All right, tip number one, and this is critical, folks, especially when they're little. Make absolutely positively sure that on moving day, which for us is Sunday, make absolutely sure that you move these guys while they're still in it. Because I promise you, especially with younger birds, it doesn't matter so much when they're mature, but with younger birds, if you try to move them, if you try to move this chicken tractor while they're out of it, you're going to spend quite a bit of time at the end of the day trying to get them back in. So make life easier on yourself and move it first before you do anything else. Tip number two. Now, a lot of folks are not real crazy about these vacuum type waterers, but I am, and specifically in this system because at night when it gets cold and freezing, well, guess what's hot? This pile. And if not this one, let's say you just started it, you could always put it on your other piles. So there's so much heat coming out of here that I've never, in fact, and usually when it's cold out and I know it's going to be below freezing, I stick this thing up here. I can almost guarantee it, not only is it going to not be frozen the next day, it'll actually be warm. So this is one cool way, one cool hack that I didn't even think about talking about until my friends Darren and Patty came out. She was asking, well, how do you keep it from freezing? Well, this is how we do it. And we've been doing it this way ever since we started this system, out of necessity, really. This is where this waterer, there's times where it's a love-hate relationship, but in cold weather, these are the ones I like specifically for this system. And then during the day, let's say it's still cold, I can still leave this up here. You're going to have a little more problem in terms of water management, but I can leave this up during the day and put their food around it. So I can put it in the center, and then whatever food scraps I have, now they're going to invariably get it into the water. It's just something you got to deal with. Or you can stick it on one side. I haven't tried this yet, but I was thinking about maybe putting it on one side. But knowing the nature of chickens and how they scratch, I can almost guarantee you no matter where you put it, it's going to, it's going to get some stuff in it. There's either other options I thought about where I let them beat down one of these piles. I could put it on top of there. There's other ways you can experiment with it, but this is the number one way I keep the water from freezing in very, very cold weather. All right, so in a situation like this where you have, debris and whatnot already in there, folks, it's really not that hard, even in a 5-gallon waterer like this. I'll just run it to the side. You might run your finger through it, but it's really as simple as that. Tip number three. This one we learned a while back, and then we're bringing it back again because we see the benefit of it. Now, we didn't do this in the first time we ran this, and that is combining two piles together every single time. Now, the way we're filling up these cages, we get about 1.5 to almost 2 cubic yards within that cage. Actually, closer to about 1 3/4 every time we fill up that cage with material. So when we put those compost piles together, this pile generates way more heat and breaks down much, much better to our liking. So that's what we're going to do. Every 2 piles, we're going to combine them, then we move on. Now, be sure not to put any more than 2 piles in there. Disclaimer. You don't want to be starting no fires or getting this thing so big to where it's impossible to manage. So 2 is perfect. 1 is sufficient, but 2 is perfect for us. All right, tip number 4. These guys are well acquainted, as you can see. They're on top of this week 1 and week 2 compost pile. Wonderful. But some days you may overfeed them, let's say, because it's hard to judge exactly how much to give them. You want to feed them just enough to where they're working these piles over to get their protein. But now, if that doesn't happen, they always have a Pavlovian response to a cup full of, let's say, chick feed. And you don't need much. I'm talking like maybe a 1/4 cup, if even that. It's more the response of them seeing you do it. So what you'll do is take that cup, sprinkle it on top of the pile, and they will raise this thing to the ground. You do that a couple of times. You may have to do it a few times. Or maybe on the days where they're just not responsive, they're not really getting after it. You do that, and I promise you, they will work this thing over. But in large part, these birds kind of do it themselves. But just remember that little trick because it's pretty handy to do. All right, tip number 5 in this system. Okay, now all of these birds are 7 weeks old. They've been in this system. This will, what is it, like 3 weeks now? The cool thing about this system is I have greater leverage to do things that I want to do, and I think it's a big deal. At 7 weeks, I might have already butchered some other birds had they been Cornish crosses, but these are the Red Ranger type, and they'll be ready in, let's say, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. I can go all the way up to 16 if I want to, and not really change much in the quality of the meat. And I may just do that. So I do have the option to where, let's say I don't want to do them all at once. Let's say I could do the plump ones at 11 weeks, or there's a problem child at 12. And this guy here is like, man, will you let me go to work and be a chicken? You may have a problem child or two you have to get rid of. Maybe there's too many roosters. Whatever the case may be, I have tons of options in this system because I didn't spend another dime on their feed. I'm not losing any money at this point. In fact, they're putting money in my pocket. The longer I can keep them out of here, because it's compost, fantastic compost that I don't have to buy. Tip number 6, take the right dog to the hunt. And what I mean by that is use the chicken tractor that works best for you. In full disclosure, and I'm not sure I explained it well enough before, the old tractor we had, in fact, it was a variation on Jeff Lawton's original chicken tractor on steroids. Now, we redesigned it in such a way to where the front would come off, you can lift up the roost, get in there with a pitchfork, and then take the material out and put it on your pile. That, to me, is the absolute best chicken tractor for this system. But there is no way, no way on earth in these hills of North Carolina that I'm ever going to be able to pull something like that around. So it required an audible. It required a change. And the one that provided, honestly, the best for this terrain, without a doubt, was Justin Rhodes' chicken tractor. Only real modification is that we basically put the paneling all the way around, and we put little spikes in the front feet to where even in this steep terrain, we can stick it down like that Thundercat mobile. That's where, believe it or not, got the idea, was an old cartoon from the 80s where this little thing had claws and it would climb up hills. Well, that's essentially what this thing does. We basically pick it up and use gravity. We work from the top to the bottom. Remember, you want to use up, don't make your life harder. We go from top to bottom, so up the hill, we'll constantly work our way down as this thing tractors through the landscape. But take the right dog to the hunt. For us, I don't want anybody thinking, well, I got to build one just this way. Go back and watch the older videos we did. And we had the Deluxe Model 2000 or whatever it was I called. It was light. It was awesome. It worked extremely well, but it was way too top heavy and frankly, way too heavy for this thing. This thing has a 6-foot wheelbase here. So there's really, this terrain, there's nothing that would be better suited for the terrain we're in. So make the right chicken tractor and take the right dog to the hunt. Because at the end of the day, if you pick the wrong tractor, you're going to make life harder for you. In fact, there was another, I'm not going to openly disclose it here, but when Darren and Patty were here, Darren came up with, as he always does, an ingenious way of getting material out of this tractor to get it into a new compost pile. I'm not going to disclose that. That's his intellectual property, and maybe that'll be the impetus he needs to start his own YouTube channel, which, by the way, all of us would be the beneficiaries of. But there are ways to make this thing way more efficient. And inside of like 2 minutes, he figured out how to do it. So if he ever designs it, comes out with it, we'll make modifications to this to make that so. But pick the right stuff. Just like I use the waterer because it works well for us. Pick the one that works well for you and your environment. All right, that's all the tips and tricks for now. There's a bunch more, so stay tuned. That said, it's time for us to get to work, get these guys squared away, and make them happy. All right, there you have it, folks. All the tips and tricks we can provide for right now. We'll do it again later as it makes more sense. Chickens are happy. Everybody has their jobs. They know what their jobs are. So, folks, well, I truly hope this information is helpful to you and that you can use some of it. So until next time, this is Billy, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. We'll see you next time.